I want to thank you all for coming here this afternoon. Today, as is ordered under the Charter of the City of Syracuse, I have delivered the 2017-2018 budget to the Common Council. This year's budget has been more difficult to put together than normal given the tumult that is going on in both state government and federal government. So allow me for a second to first talk about what is in our budget and then talk about some of the issues that I want to bring to your attention. This year's is a $700 million budget, which includes $293 million for city operations. It includes new technology like Shotspotter, which I announced at my State of the City address, which we believe will have an impact almost immediately on helping us cut down on shots fired and gunfire in the city of Syracuse. It also includes innovative solutions to infrastructure that I've also talked about both in my State of the City address as well as throughout the year. These are all made possible through the hard work of our innovation team, and some of those projects you have also heard about. It continues our support of Say Yes to Education, our continued $1 million, and we are very pleased with the progress that Say Yes to Education has made. In fact, so let me talk about some specifics. This year's budget will include $260,000 in funding for Shotspotter, which, as I said, will allow the Syracuse police to respond more quickly to shots fired incidents. It uses audio technology, which helps pinpoint immediately the location of shots fired so nearby officers can respond. And we believe, based on the experience of other cities, that this is going to dramatically reduce response time and increase our ability to get illegal guns off the streets of the city of Syracuse. The land bank, this budget includes another $1 million in funding for the Greater Syracuse Land Bank to continue their work in revitalizing our city neighborhoods. In 2016, the land bank acquired more than 350 properties and sold 150, including 33 to new owner-occupied properties. Since its inception, the land bank has returned more than 450 properties to the tax rolls, and it continues to receive awards from entities across the country, and including, of course, the New York State Attorney General, which has given us more grants to continue the kind of good work that the land bank is doing. The Say Yes to Education program includes $1 million in funding for the Say Yes to Education. There are nearly 3,000 Syracuse City School graduates enrolled in 2- and 4-year colleges since 2009. And we are already seeing the success stories of our graduates. This year, in 4-year institutions, graduates are averaging a retention rate of 75%. That's extraordinary, and we're very proud of the work that Say Yes to Education continues to do and the promise that it holds for our students and the residents of our city. In economic development, last year we saw more than $250 million in new construction in Syracuse, and these projects are putting people to work, revitalizing neighborhoods, and importantly generating revenue for the city through permitting. The city received last year $2.7 million in revenue from permit fees, and it's optimistic that this growth will continue this year. But as always, you know that I am fiscally responsible and conservative, so we have projected only a $2.4 million in construction permits in this proposal. We are pleased that because of the efforts that we have seen in the city, we will see an increase in our assessed values this year of $19 million, and that means that our property tax levy will increase with an additional $178,000 in revenue for the city of Syracuse and an additional $300,000 revenue for the Syracuse City School District. Now let me talk about the Syracuse City School District for a moment here. Superintendent Aliseo was going to join me this morning to talk about this budget. He and his staff are currently in a meeting determining how to address the budget that they received. Now, as you all know, New York State has an April 1st deadline to pass its budget, and they were delayed this year by just about a week. The impact of that is we had to put our budget to bed, or go to the printer, if you will, on Friday. So what we did was we put in the budget that the school board passed in, I think, early March, and we kept the the budget that they had for last year in the budget. Those two numbers are not accurate. In the actual budget, it says this is for illustration only. So the Syracuse City School District is going to have to cut the budget based on the revenues that they received from New York State, and we're going to be working with them to supplement and put in the budget numbers that represent the actual spending and the actual revenue that they received. In addition to that, you have heard me talk about the proposals that the Trump administration has made for their own budget, for the federal budget. The federal budget impacts the city school district as well. They have $18 million in Title I funding, which the Trump administration has proposed dramatically reducing. They are also thinking about how they will react to that if that becomes a reality. There is a deadline for a continuing resolution at the end of May for the federal government. That extends past our budget's deadline. So a lot of the decisions that we are making in this budget have to do with the reality as best we can predict it. We have been told by the federal government that our community development block grant funding will not become available until June 1st. Normally it is available at May 1st. The city council voted on that budget about a month ago. What this means is that our community centers and our housing agencies that rely on community development block grant funding are going to be in a holding pattern at best, and at worst, the Trump administration has suggested that those funds get zeroed out. When you are putting together a budget at the local level, which you receive significant revenues to do affordable housing, homeless prevention, make sure that your community centers stay open to provide resources to children and families in our city. These are incredibly troubling choices that are being made in Washington. At the same time, the delay of the New York State budget has put us somewhat behind the eight ball, as you can tell by the school district meeting right now to determine how it's going to cut its budget. So those are some of the factors and headwinds that we faced as we released this budget. Nevertheless, I want to say I continue to be extraordinarily proud of the work that my administration has done to be fiscally responsible, to face these choices honestly and transparently, and to continue to be fiscally responsible, which is recognized in a whole number of factors, not the least of which is our continued A rating by bond rating agencies from Wall Street. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions that anybody has.
So the school district is going to have to cut based on what they're hearing today from the state?
Correct.
Okay, and you were going to try to make up for some of those losses through city funding, or?
No, well, we're going to make up some of them because, as I said, because of the increase in our property tax levy, the school district's going to receive an extra $303,000. Now that is, just a tiny bit when you're talking about the millions. But the school district, right now, they're doing the final runs. Again, the budget was finalized late last night, about 11 o'clock, when the New York State Senate passed it. So the school district is looking at that financial information now and putting it into their budget, and then it is going to be, they know it's going to be less than the school board voted on when they initially voted on it. So they are right now looking at how they're going to make cuts based on state revenue, which is the lion's share of their revenue. But also in this mix is the fact that, as I said, they have $18 million in Title I funding from the federal government, and there is no assurance that that money is going to be there or be at that level, and that will also potentially result in cuts as well.
Do you know how much those cuts are for?
I do not, nobody, and I will tell you, Chris, at this point, nobody knows exactly because there is what the Trump administration has proposed, and then that goes to Congress, and then that will be part of what initially gets discussed as part of the continuing resolution, which is the deadline is the end of May. As I said, our budget by charter has to be voted on effectively the first week of May.
As far as the CDBG funds, from what I understood, unless it's changed, that this year's funding shouldn't be impacted this fiscal year, but it's the following year, the city's following year application that is unknown because of.
Well, Scott, I guess let me just say, so it depends on, not to be semantic, but it depends on how you define as this fiscal year. So let me just be very as precise as possible. I'm talking about the budget that the council voted on, I believe, last month. And so the normal way it happens is the city passes that budget in March. It goes to HUD. HUD looks it over, and then we get our allocation by May 1st. We have sent our budget into HUD, and they have said, you will not get your allocation May 1st. Don't expect it until June 1st, and there are likely to be significant cuts depending on what happens with a continuing resolution.
As the mayor of the city, are there specific community centers that you're really, really concerned about? Can you name a few that you're...
Sure, I can tell you right off the top three. Southwest Community Center, the Northeast Community Center, and Westcott Community Center get significant funding from the Community Development Block Grant.
So is there a chance they would close for that month between?
I think that what we're talking about here is if the Trump administration's budget were to be put in place, roughly speaking, and I apologize, I don't have this number at my fingertips, but roughly speaking, Southwest Community Center gets about $300,000 from the, Mary, do you know offhand how much they get? About so Southwest Community Center gets about $350,000 from the Community Development Block Grant. And the Trump administration says it wants to eliminate that. So what is the Southwest Community Center going to do if the Trump administration's budget gets put into law? How are they going to make up $350,000?
And what are the vital services that they provide in terms of you as a mayor, with how they serve the city for you?
So, the Southwest Community Center, Northeast Community Center, the Westcott Community Center all provide incredibly important. So they provide after-school programming. They provide tutoring. They provide job development. They provide citizenship classes. They all kinds of public services that during the summer or when there is no school. For example, during the break that's going to happen over Easter, Passover, they'll provide lunch and breakfast for children. So they provide free legal counseling for people who are concerned about losing their home. There is a whole long list of services that are important to the fabric of our community that these community centers provide.
Is there a deficit with this budget?
Yes, there is a deficit.
And what's that number?
So we have projected that we will use $18 million in fund balance. As most of you know, we have every year since I have been mayor, we have been very conservative about how we use the fund balance, and through when we get to the year's end, we always use less than we projected to use.
And how much is left of the fund?
There, I don't have that number offhand, you, Mary?
After that 18 million, it's still about
27.
Yep.
You talked about the assessments going up.
Mhm.
Was that part of an overall effort to reassess the value of many properties, or is it up from businesses? Or?
It's up from development. So it's not, we didn't reassess or engage in any overall program other than what we normally do as assessment, but this is due to increased valuation on properties in the city.
I gotta go back to that 18 million. Just looking at where we've been going year after year, if we continue on this path, the city would be insolvent in 3 or 4 years. I mean, is that something you're concerned about leaving the next mayor?
Well, of course, although when I became mayor, Chris, we were going to be insolvent in 3 years as well. So the reality is that there are deep fiscal challenges that are impacting municipalities across New York State. The city of Albany is insolvent and has been insolvent for the past 2 years, and they've gotten $12.5 million from New York State last year and this year to keep them out of bankruptcy. Yonkers is highly susceptible to fiscal stress. Monroe County is the highest county susceptible to fiscal stress. Nassau County is already in a financial control board. The city of Buffalo has been in and out of a financial control board. So these are trends that impact all of New York State. And, as a city in New York State, we're clearly part of this overall trend. As many of you have heard me speak a lot about, there has to be a reassessment of how we fund our cities. The state has frozen aid to municipalities for, this is the 8th year, and at the same time continued to pass down unfunded mandates at record levels. There has been no meaningful pension reform, and while we had a property tax cap, we were also promised mandate reform. None of that has happened.
So what's the cause for the jump? I mean, last year we were 12 million or so in deficit. We're up 50%.
Well, the cause of it, is there's increased pension costs, increased healthcare costs, increased binding interest arbitration, and all of those costs that go along with having we are a service-driven organization, which means most of the money that we pay out are for employees and benefits.
That's kind of what I was going to ask, how this compares to how much was taken out since you've been in office. Is this the most that you've gone into the fund balance, or?
Yes, I believe so. It is.
Sales tax revenue, I think, was down about $1.5 million last year. What are you looking at this year?
So we have budgeted $83 million in sales tax revenue. We always, since I became mayor, take the projection that Onondaga County uses, and we've had volatility in what the projection has been and what we have actually received. So this year, the county's projections show a $600,000 increase from last year. But although according to the state comptroller, the overall sales tax receipts in Onondaga County were down 1% in 2016. That has an impact when your state revenues are flat, your sales tax comes in less than projected.
And just to go back to schools real quick, you might have already said this, we know that's the majority of all the money that gets spent is for schools. So if we look at, how much we spent on schools last year compared to how much you want to spend this year, is it going to be less? I know it's still up.
No, it'll be more than was spent last year, but not as much as the school district had voted for in their budget. So roughly speaking, the school district was looking for an additional $20 million from the state. They're not going to get that.
And at budget hearings last year, when we were talking about this, there was concern that, so much money was, there was a lot of money allocated to the schools. Do you think that too much money? I mean, they were getting good results because of it.
Well, I think, Tom, that's an important factor. We are not in a bean counting business, and it's easy to just look at balance sheets and say, well, if you don't pay retiree health care, you can close the deficit. If you don't hire additional police officers, you can get closer to it. But we are in a business where we are providing vital services to the people of our community at a time when the state and federal government have walked away from providing these services. So that means, look at the school district. We have the best graduation rates that we've had in 10 years. We don't have the achievement gap between children of color and white children that you're seeing in other cities. We have the highest retention rate in colleges than we have ever had. We have the Say Yes to Education program, which you're hearing a lot today about the free tuition for middle-class children. Well, we've been doing that for close to 10 years now. So if you want to have a strong community, you have to make important investments. Anybody else?
Is there any consideration of upping property taxes to make up for some of that deficit?
There's always a consideration of that, Chris, always. But here's the issue. 50% of our property is off the tax rolls. So roughly speaking, rule of thumb, for every 1% that we raise, it's about less than $1 million. We can't raise property taxes 20%, obviously. Again, this is what I mean when I say that there has to be an overall discussion about how we pay for important government services. So, for example, the single largest property owner in the city of Syracuse is the state of New York. Between SUNY ESF, upstate hospitals, the state office building, Hutchings, all of them require police services, fire services, snow plowing, all of those very important and expensive public services. The ones that I mentioned are the 3 most expensive services that we provide, and yet they do not pay anything for those services.
So I may have missed it at the beginning. Was a property tax increase part of?
No, There's no property tax increase as part of this.
Are you gonna go back to the table with those groups? I mean, I know you got money from SU last year in the agreement with them, but there's still a few, I think St. Joe's and a few other hospitals and places that aren't taking, or aren't participating in that tax share.
Correct. We continue to have discussions about it, but what I have is a bully pulpit. There's not, legally speaking, a lot of leverage that I have, and I have continued to have this discussion with New York State. And again, when you see New York State bailing out Albany, and part of why they say they are giving Albany an additional $12.5 million, and this is the second year in a row, is because they talk about the impact that having state government in the city of Albany has. Well, again, the single largest property owner of our nonprofit property in the city of Syracuse is New York State. And again, they're not paying for these monies. This is something that I have brought up to our state delegation. They're well aware of it. And it is something that's not unique to Syracuse. It happens to be the way that our communities have developed. So Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany all have the lion's share of their property is off the tax rolls, and it is being taken by nonprofits, hospitals, higher education, government buildings.
Last year is when the agreement with SU started, right? There's 4 more years beyond that?
No, we renewed it last year. So I think I forget what the first year was, but last year was when we renewed it.
How much was?
It's about $7 million over 5 years.
There's an increase of $50,000 this year.
Is there more money being allocated to the police department?
Excuse me?
Is there more money in this budget being allocated to the police department?
Yes, there's growth. I mean, we're not zero funding it. You have to have growth again, because I said, when you think about what it is that we do, we are a people-heavy operation. And when you are personnel-heavy, that means you have to pay pension costs, you have to pay healthcare costs, both of which have been increasing, and you have to pay employment costs. I should also say that we have settled all but one of the outstanding contracts with our unions, and the one that we have not settled is with the police department, with the police union.
As I'm streaming this, a lot of the comments are about infrastructure, roads, all that. So
Near and dear to my heart.
can you address, how much you've devoted to that?
Well, look, we have devoted an extraordinary amount of intellectual energy in looking at how we can be more efficient about how we pave roads, the kind of treatment that we use for roads so that we can extend the life. There's new micro-paving treatments that we are testing out. We are testing a dig once philosophy so that when we dig into do roads that we're doing all the infrastructure. We're also looking at sensors and how they work to predict our water main breaks. We also have algorithms that we've done. We're looking at how we can fill potholes quicker and be more efficient and effective about it, and share that information with the public in new treatments. A number of you will remember that I've been talking about infrastructure for a lot of years now. And when I first started talking about it, I was told that the city should fix its own pipes. And this year, the state of New York gave $2.5 billion to water main infrastructure. So I think that's a lesson in advocacy, to say that you can continue to show how important these things are, and that they will eventually get to a priority level. And in this case, the state gave $2.5 billion for water main infrastructure. Those are going to go into different programs, and we in the city are going to look to see what programs we may qualify for and how much money we can get under that. Also, the Trump administration has said that they're very interested in infrastructure, so that we hope that there may be some programs there that we'll be able to utilize as well. Yes.
You mentioned police benefits, but we're coming off of a year of record number of homicides. You mentioned Shotspotter. Anything else in the city budget might include that might curb crime in Syracuse?
Well, look, the entire budget is aimed at curbing crime, whether that is, you run a gamut from making sure that your community centers are open, making sure that we have a new dedicated task force on homicides, making sure that we have our trauma response team and our violence interrupters, and utilizing them, to technology like Shotspotter and police cameras. The troubling rise in homicides, again, is a trend we have seen all other categories of crime go down significantly, except for homicides. And that is very troubling. But we share that with cities across the United States, and so we're all looking to find new and innovative ways to interrupt that violence and to stop it. The level of guns that are on our streets has got to be part of the solution, to take them off.
Where Shotspotter is going to go in the neighborhood?
We have not yet. That's going to be driven by data, and we will share that when we make those decisions, as well as sharing how we got at where we place the cameras based on data. But again, none of you will be surprised because you know the data and you can see where those levels are.
Turns out a lot of people want to take your place. And there's a lot of people in the running, and they'll be looking forward, one of them, to making the next budget as you wrap up your final. Do you have any regrets as you put these final numbers together?
No, I don't. Anyone else? All right, thank you all very much.